To the public meeting of the City School District of Albany Board of Education. If you are planning to speak in public comment tonight, there is a sign-up sheet on that piece of paper on that table over there. Please make sure that your name is added if you'd like to speak tonight. We invite those of you who like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance to do that with us if you choose. I pledge allegiance In addition to saying the Pledge of Allegiance, we always focus our meeting by restating the mission of the City School District of Albany, which is to work in partnership with our diverse community to engage every learner in a robust educational program designed to provide the knowledge and skills necessary for success. Superintendent Adams, do you have a report for us?
I do. Thank you so very much. Good evening, everyone, Madam President, members of the board. Tonight's agenda includes an update on the status of our rebuilding Albany High School construction project. Phase 1 is moving ahead nicely this spring, and we are looking forward to launching the second phase of the project in coming weeks. To that end, I would like to invite everyone to attend our Phase 2 groundbreaking ceremony on the morning of Saturday, June 1st. This event will celebrate the start of construction on our second new academic wing. We also will provide opportunities to tour the Phase 1 building for a first-hand look at the progress on that amazing new facility. The Phase 2 groundbreaking will begin at 10:30 a.m. in front of the campus along Washington Avenue. We will offer the Phase 1 tours beginning at 9:15 a.m. Please stay tuned for more information. On Monday of this week, I had the opportunity to participate in the Conference on Women Leaders Advancing Women-Sensitive Public Policy in the New York State. Also, we had several board members present. President Savage was there, Secretary Lang, Vice President Smith, and Ms. Tabitha Wilson attended that conference. So thank you, ladies, for being there. This program was held at the University of Albany and was sponsored by the Center for Women in Government and Civil Society at Rockefeller College. The conference featured a keynote address from New York Secretary of State Rossana Rosado and a panel discussion that included Albany Common Council member Dorsey Applers, Assembly members Pat Fahey, Latrice Walker, Carrie Warner, and TV host Liz Benjamin served as the moderator. Lieutenant Governor Kathy Hochul was also a featured speaker. I had the opportunity to lead a breakout session on equitable access and opportunities. Our discussion focused on developing an equity framework to impact public policy statewide. We examined what equity means and looks like through our culture, practice, and leadership, strategies for actualizing equity in one's daily practice, and we just tipped the iceberg on action steps for impacting public policy in order to facilitate equitable practices in education. I was honored to be able to participate in this important conversation with so many exceptional leaders from our community, our region, and our state. On Tuesday, I participated in a wonderful example of community partnerships and environmental activism. Steve Costello's fifth grade class at Toast joined with a fifth grade class from Schenectady to plant 45 trees on the Corning Preserve along the Hudson River. The students were guided by workers from the City of Albany Forestry Division and educators from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation. They were also supported by volunteers from Albany Fund for Education, the College of St. Rose, and Cornell Cooperative Extension. Mayor Sheehan and the DEC Deputy Commissioner for Natural Resources, Judy DeBecke, also participated. A special shout out to AFE, which does so many wonderful things for our students. The event Tuesday was part of AFE's Albany Goes Green initiative, and this is the 10th year that Albany students have planted trees throughout the city alongside the AFE volunteers. I also want to thank Toast Principal Teresa Brown for connecting her students with their peers from Schenectady for this collaborative project. The 2020 census is coming. That's a message you're going to hear a lot about throughout our community over the next year. I had the opportunity to partner with Mayor Sheehan and several other community leaders Wednesday for the census kickoff announcement at City Hall. It is critical that our city make sure that all of our residents are counted. If the 2020 census finds that our population is over 100,000 for the first time since 1990, Albany would be in a position to receive millions of dollars in additional federal funding that would benefit everyone who lives in this community. In contrast, we will all lose out if we're unable to get a complete count that shows that our population is over 100,000. The City School District is a partner with the city's 2020 Complete Count Committee, and we are all looking forward to doing what we can to support and get the word out and educate our students and families about the census and why it is important. Another important message for our community is that the Census Bureau is hiring more than 200 full and part-time positions locally for this effort. You can visit albanyschools.org or usajobs.gov to learn more about these opportunities. Census Day is April 1, 2020. Please stay tuned and be on the lookout for much, much more in the coming months. As a follow-up discussion at the April 16th board meeting about state testing during Ramadan and other religious holidays, I had a phone conversation with Clara DeSorbo, the State Education Department's Bureau Chief and the Office of State Assessment. Ms. DeSorbo informed me that State Ed is sensitive to a range of religious holidays when developing its testing schedule each year. That includes Ramadan, which begins Monday and extends through June 3rd. As an example, when the Muslim High Holy Day of Eid fell during the June Regents testing prior periods last year, State Ed scheduled that as a rating day so that there were no tests for students. Ms. DeSorbo informed me that while the state is not able to cancel the required exams, they have extended the makeup periods so that those dates fall outside of the periods of the religious observances. For tests involving students in grade 3 through 8, State Ed also encourages school districts to schedule those exams as early in the morning as possible. They also recommended that we continue to voice our concerns during their annual open comment periods regarding the testing calendar. Ms. DeSorbo stressed that all of the comments are reviewed and taken into account as they do their planning each year. The current open comment period relating to the 2020 January, June, and August region exams runs through May 17th. The next opportunity for comment will be late November or early December when State Ed begins looking at its 3-8 testing for the 2021 school year. We will make sure that our voices are heard prior to May 17th and also when that comment period opens again in November and December. A reminder that the budget vote is coming up on Tuesday, May 21st. As you know, in addition to our budget proposal this year, we have a facilities referendum that would allow us to create a new permanent middle school at North Albany Academy and implement a 5-year facilities plan. All of the work in Proposition 2 will be done with no impact on taxes. There are also 2 board seats up for election May 21st. Board President Ann Savage and Board Member Damaris Alexander Mann will be running unopposed. I also want to remind everyone that voter registration, the deadline for the school budget is coming up, and that is Monday, May 6th. We have more information here tonight, including voter registration forms. You may also visit albanyschools.org. We had 2 community budget presentations this week, and we currently have 9 more scheduled before the vote. Please call the Director of Communications and Operations, Mr. Ron Lesko, at 581-475-6065 if you would like to schedule a presentation for your organization. A new element of our budget roadshow this year has been a video that features the students and staff members talking about the programs that they value. I would like to play a portion of that video for you this evening. On Monday, we will begin sharing the expanded version of these segments each day up until the vote. We hope that you will enjoy them, and please remember to vote on Tuesday, May 21st. Thank you very much.
Some students might not be confident in standing up and speaking to a group of people or writing a perfect essay, but they can express themselves through a painting or a drawing. And it's really important that everyone is able to express themselves the way that feels best for them.
One thing that we need is to challenge ourselves physically, mentally, and challenge your spirit, and that is what sports does, and that's what sports has done for me.
Our programs build confidence, and our programs help us network with people within our desired fields or programs that help with our careers later in life, which is extremely beneficial.
When I, as a school leader, grow, it helps my students learn and grow.
ENL is creating a safe space that not only educates the students, but also their families, and making them feel part of the family here in Albany.
Community schools seek to reach all of our families and students to provide community and youth development, academic services, and access to social and health programming that will make everyone better.
Music is important to me because it helps me calm down whenever I'm really stressed. I think everyone who has the opportunity to, they should be able to take the class.
As a hall monitor, what don't we do? We do everything around the building. We help get the students to the lunch, to the classes, home safely, off the buses.
Theater as a whole is the study of empathy, which I think is a very important concept to be teaching young kids about, especially as we go through, adolescence and all of the ups and downs.
That's what trauma-informed care is. It's about changing the environment for our students so that they feel appreciated, they feel good about themselves, and they're able to achieve academic success.
I think STEM is important because it gets us prepared for the future in college, and it makes me excited to come to school and learn.
The last piece of my report is hot off the press. Every year, you know that we have an administrator from the Capital Area Principals and Supervisors Association, which would be named the Administrator of the Year. This year, we are so very proud that it is Rosalind Gaines Harrell, the principal at Arbor Hill, who has been named Principal of the Year. So congratulations. That concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Superintendent Adams. What an excellent report. I'm thrilled that we were able to make a solution for our students who celebrate Ramadan to make sure that they were able to take their tests with the proper time for them. That's terrific. So this is the time in our meeting that we set aside to hear from district residents, parents, students, and other members of the public. We welcome community input about the decisions we are making. And in addition to accepting comments at this time, we also accept them by email, phone, and postal mail. We ask that people who are making comments keep in mind that by law, information about individual students and specific district staff cannot be shared. Every student and every staff member deserves to know that concerns about them will not be aired in public. We also ask that you keep in mind that public comment is not the best place to first alert the district to a concern. We ask that you share concerns first with relevant staff, such as the teacher or principal, and if you feel that concern is not addressed adequately, appeal that to the person's supervisor, up the chain of the command, if necessary to the superintendent. Decisions made by the superintendent may be appealed to the board. Finally, please note that the board generally does not respond during public comment. If you need a response, please consider contacting us by email, phone, or postal mail. When I recognize you, please state your name and city of residence. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes. You will be given a 1-minute notice and a 10-second notice by Ms. Lang, and I will notify you if your time has expired. The only name on the list tonight is April Bacon.
Obviously, you all know me. My name is April Bacon. I have an 8th grader at Myers Middle School. Today, I want to discuss the district's favorite new catchword, which is bias. We've gotten very comfortable with that word. Just because we use that word, we need to remember that racism still is a major issue in our district, and bias does not replace the fact that we still have racists here. And I need people to really focus on the fact that we still need to address that. I understand we use bias so racists don't feel attacked. I don't care how they feel. With that being said, I think that sometimes we forget what's going on in our school. So you're like, what are you talking about? We don't have racist issues. No worries, I have examples because I get the emails. One of the things we have to work on is students being singled out, not just based on behavior. If they are acting like their peers and they happen to be black and this other student is white, our black students are getting singled out. I have witnessed it. And by the way, in case it makes people feel a little bit better, your white students have actually come to me about that too, because they actually notice their privilege. That's a problem. I have another situation that seems to be a major issue in the high school is we are in May, and teachers are still confusing young, light-skinned black females. Now, we all don't look alike. I don't care if they're light with freckles like me. That does not mean we look alike. There is no reason that we are still confusing these students, and it is affecting grades and attendance. And then when parents actually reach out, talk to the teacher's response is, oh, my mistake. No, that's an unacceptable mistake. And it's unacceptable, especially in May, and it's unacceptable because it's the second time the same teacher has made the mistake. I do not think this is one teacher. I believe this is a problem in our district, because that gets to show you again, people must believe all of us look alike. That's not bias, that's racist. We don't. And you know what? It's really actually quite insulting. And racism isn't, just so we're clear, in our buildings, because a lot of things we do, we go for our teachers and our administrators and our students and our parents. And you know what, guys? It's from the top down. And I'm gonna give you a couple examples from outside of your buildings, but within your district, that this is still actually a problem. For example, when certain parents of color have information that they get, it is mind-boggling to me that we assume that this information only comes from other black people. This, in case, is not the fact. If we are employing people, or if we have people in our midst who think that any information obtained is only by people of color to people of color, this is probably why you haven't figured out how we get the information, because you keep looking through the wrong door. I do not only speak to black people, and other black people don't only speak to me. That is your racism showing. Make sure if you're going to ever try to figure out what a parent is doing and how they're doing it, you question everybody equally, not people who just happen to look like the person who has the information. And if we are employing people like that, or we are contracting people like that, I ask you that you review that, because that's representing our school. And if somebody like that is representing our school and they have that way about them, there's a problem. Lastly, and I'm going to say this very honestly, when board members react to what is being put up on Facebooks and they are sharing things, and it is only done for a parent of color and it comes back to them, I can tell you, it is also very, not only insulting, it's also racist. At least do it to every parent who brings in the same energy that we do. And if you're not doing it to all of us, do it to none of us, but believe us, we know. My last statement is the following. I was always taught that there was nothing scarier than a black person with an education. We're actually deemed we're scarier to you than a black person with a gun. See, that's not your bias showing. That is yet again racism. I can't vote yes for your budget until you tell me what we're going to do to address this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going to move to the part of our meeting we call routine consent. During this part of the meeting, we approve routine matters for the district. These usually include items such as contracts, field trips, hiring of personnel, and other similar matters. We vote on these as a group with no discussion. That allows us to use our meeting time more efficiently. Nonetheless, each Board of Education member has the option to set aside any routine consent item in order to require discussion and a separate vote on that item. So I will now entertain a motion to adopt the routine consent agenda. Mrs. Smith, do I have a second? Mrs. Alexander Mann, are there any set-asides? Ms. Krejci.
Yes, I'd like to set aside, it should be number 12 for the Costa Rica field trip.
Ms. Wilson.
Item 9 and item 34.
Can you just give me the names of the items as well, please?
Sure, Renaissance Corporation and the Unified Basketball Team. Club. Sure, Unified Basketball Club and Renaissance Corporation.
Are there any other set-asides? So, all in favor of adopting the routine consent agenda, less the Costa Rica trip, the Renaissance contract, and the Unified Basketball Team? That is unanimous. And now we'll take each of these one at a time. Let's just take them in the order that they came in. So the first one will be, may I have a motion to adopt the Costa Rica field trip? Ms. Wilson, seconded by Ms. Smith. Any discussion?
I just wanted to say, we've had presentations from students that have gone on the Costa Rica trip in the past, and based on those presentations and what they've shared, there seems to be a lot of value to the program, but it's really hard to determine what value this particular trip has from the written information provided, which is 12 pages of cut and pasted our district's mission statement, the Key Club's mission statement, and lots of bits and pieces of various high school curriculums. It's not really clear what students will be doing other than they will be working with local ecologists and excursion operators, which I wasn't sure what that consisted of. I wasn't really sure really where a lot of these things that say they're part of the curriculum would come in, like have students exploring a future career, considering their desired salary, benefits, career path, something about learning about the impact of American capitalism, profit in the entrepreneur, physical fitness, art. It was really not clear I'd really like to know a little more about what students would be doing. I'd really like to see the students produce some sort of written work or research work or work that's something more than just, it looks like it's just a short verbal talk about their trip. And it just seems really vague to me. It's not what I'd like to, by contrast, the field trip that's being presented for Boston is, I know exactly what they're doing and I know exactly how it fits into their curriculum. Finally, I just wanted to comment on the requirement for the Costa Rica trip that all students, let me just go back to this. Students must be physically fit to participate. That did raise a problem for me in implying that students must be physically fit and ready to hike for hours and shovel dirt, because I would hope that these field trips would be available to everyone of all physical abilities or disabilities. So I understand the point is, I think I understand what they're trying to get at with that permission slip, but it was of concern to me in a variety of ways.
So the superintendent has stepped out for a minute. I didn't know if anyone had anything they wanted to share about this. I know we went through a lot of work on the Costa Rica trip last year, so Ms. McKenna?
Sure. So I can certainly submit additional documentation to answer your questions or your concerns. And I'm happy to do so in the SBU. We do have a pretty detailed summary of what students will be doing in Costa Rica, as well as the service learning requirement once they return from the trip. Very similar to what we've done in the past.
Thank you.
Ms. Smith, did you have something to add?
Thank you. I think, so I have had the experience of my daughter being on this trip, and I will say that was last year's trip, and there was a great deal of work done by staff. And so I feel as if it, like I supported it because of those changes. I would say, however, though, I have to agree with Ms. Krejci here, that just kind of looking at the presentation, it just feels a little like, it lacks cohesion, it feels a little sloppily presented, and I can't figure out exactly, kind of what's happening. And it's really like an articulation of standards and things like that, and that's fine, but it doesn't really give you what is the expected of students, what will the outcome be for them. And again, I really hate being critical of it, but I didn't find the service learning to be as robust and meaningful as I thought it should be for my kid, you know, and it was a great trip, don't get me wrong, but this academic component seemed to me to be a tad lacking.
Ms. McKenna, do you know if this, the timing requires that this be adopted tonight?
It does not need to be adopted tonight.
So shall we table this for 2 weeks while we wait for additional information?
Yes, and I don't want to micromanage, but I'm curious, especially since part of the trip does mention that the students are to become members of a global society and experience full cultural immersion. I am a little bit curious about why this is done through staying in hotels rather than homestays.
Okay. So we're going to table this for next week, and we'll wait for additional information. If anyone has any additional comment on this, I'm going to suggest that we submit that through the written mechanisms that we have. Okay. Okay. So now I would like to take a, I guess I'm supposed to have a motion to table. The lawyers. Motion by Ms. Alexander Mann, seconded by Dr. Chator. All in favor of tabling this for 2 weeks is unanimous. Then can I take a motion to accept the Renaissance Corporation donation? A motion to Ms. Smith.
Can we make that motion
second,
about both? Like 9?
You want to do them together?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll do them together, the Renaissance and the Unified Basketball. Motion by Ms. Smith, second by Ms. Dr. Chator. Is there any discussion? Ms. Wilson.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to call out these two, and specifically because I really feel like the Unified Basketball team has a powerful mission, and I'm so excited about that. And also the Renaissance contribution is very well appreciated, and I think that's really nice too.
Thank you very much for taking the time to call those out. They are both very excited. I'm particularly excited about the Unified Basketball too. All in favor of accepting those two donations? That is unanimous. Class is back on. Okay, so now that brings us to the topic, the action items on our policy agenda. I know there was a late-breaking change to one of these policies, so I want to make sure that we slow down enough to review that carefully. Dr. Chator.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. So what we have today are the 7 items that we discussed last time, and we only had a problem with 4710, which was the grading policy, where Ms. Krejci asked the question as to, the wording said that the grades are going to be, for every quarter you're going to go up to 55. So what happens if you have a first quarter where you have a really bad first quarter versus you have a really bad fourth quarter? How does that affect your grade? It wouldn't affect your grade in either case, because if your first quarter grade would come up to 55, and if you do well in 2, 3, and 4, you're okay. If you're good in 1, 2, and 3, your fourth quarter grade would also come to a 55. So if you've done well in the first 3 quarters, it wouldn't affect your passing. So I think that clarifies the question that was around the wording of the grade going up to a 55. So it'll go up to 55 in each quarter.
So it sounds like, I think they've actually made an edit to the policy. It's slightly different than what we saw before. So now it says a student may be awarded the minimum 55% in the fourth quarter due to extenuating circumstances as determined by the teacher and or building principal, to address the concern that was raised last time.
So thank you for making us make that change and make the policy more clear. So if there are any other questions, if there are no other questions, may I make a motion to adopt all of them?
Dr. Chator makes a motion. Ms. Smith seconds. All in favor of adopting these policies as proposed? And just for the record, and for those who don't attend board meetings all the time, we should mention that we had a fairly extensive conversation on all of these 2 weeks ago, as we always do, because we always try and discuss a policy and anything we do as an action in one board meeting, giving the community 2 weeks to respond and let us know their suggestions before we implement 2 weeks later. That brings us to another action item, which is an amendment to our 2019-20 calendar. That is next year's calendar. I think we talked about this fairly extensively. Do we need any further discussion, or can we just take an action on this? Can I have a motion to adopt the calendar as presented? Dr. Chator, seconded by Ms. Wilson. All in favor? That is unanimous? No, that is not unanimous. All in favor again, hands up. Ms. Krejci, Ms. Smith, Ms. Savage, Dr. Chatur, Ms. Wilson, and Ms. Alexander Mann. Any discussion? I did not ask for further discussion. Okay. Any abstentions? Any opposed? Ms. Lang. Okay. Again, we talked about that fairly extensively 2 weeks ago, changing the school year calendar to allow for a staggered start for middle school and adjusting the way we handle snow days. The next topic is a discussion topic, and it is an update on our budget vote process.
Madam President, may I apologize, I stepped out to meet with a parent, but may I please go back to an item?
We would love for you to go back to an item.
Ms. Michelle Bridgewater is here as the president of our Administrators Association, ABSA, and I would just like to say thank you for the work that you have done along with Mr. Honeywell and the negotiations team on a successful negotiations of our administrator's contract. Thank you so very much for all your hard work. It is so appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, now on to the budget vote update.
So at this time, our board clerk, Ms. Sierra Sturdivant, will come forward and give us an update on the process that she has been engaging in over the past several months and giving us our next steps as we move forward through our voting process. So thank you, Ms. Sturdivant.
You're welcome. Thank you all for having me here this evening. What a wonderful experience this will be. All right, so this is just a very quick update and overview from this week forward. Everything before today was kind of just behind the scenes preparing for the vote to come. These are our guiding principles, the vision, mission, and our goals as the City School District of Albany. As you all know, on April 4th, we adopted the 1920 school budget. As of this week, the 29th, the budget newsletter will be sent out by the communications department to all Albany residents, not just people who vote. So it will be sent to everyone, and then come the week of May 6th, they will also send out budget postcards to all Albany residents so that they are reminded of the May 21st vote. For the election, we need poll inspectors. So we did 3 separate trainings. We did 2 on April 9th, 10 a.m. and 2 p.m., and we did 1 on April 11th in the evening for those who can't make it during the day. We had 68 people come and show up for the training, so we will have 68 poll workers. That was just approved in routine consent. We have, at 68, it pretty much gives us more than enough, just in case there's anything that were to happen, someone says that they're sick. I also have all contact information in case we need to move people to different locations, so that, again, anything could happen, and we want to be well-staffed. All right, so May 1st was the day that petitions were due to me. I received 4 petitions from Board of Education. One is Miss Ann Savage, the other is Miss Damaris Alexander Mann, both who are currently on the board, and so they will be running again for the 2 open spots. And then I received 4 petitions for 3 spots for the Albany Public Library. So in the order that they will be seated, in the order that they will be on the ballot, we did drawing of lots yesterday. So we have Miss Lori Kachansky, then we have Mr. Thomas McCarthy Jr., who is actually here in the building. Miss Sarah E. Dallas, and fourth is Miss Arlene C. Way. So 2 people running for Board of Education and 4 people running for trustees for Albany Public Library. Later on, we'll see what the ballot would look like, okay? And where they'll be placed on there. Tonight was the inspector approval. Today and tomorrow, absentee ballots we're stuffing and preparing and sending out. Those are going to the permanently disabled list that I received. People are more than welcome to send in applications to receive an absentee ballot. At this point, I believe I've received about 13. So those will go out tomorrow as well. Once you go through the application process, then they get their absentee ballot. We'll see that a little later too. May 6th, you can come and personally register with me to be a voter if you haven't already done so and cannot get to Board of Elections. The budget hearing is going to be here next week at 6 p.m. on May 9th. And then May 21st is the actual day of the vote. And then that evening, we'll have the vote canvass here back at Albany High about 9:30ish. After we receive all the numbers from the chairpersons of the elections. And then June 6th, we'll have the certification of canvass, which is after I go back and make sure all the numbers are correct, and then we'll bring them back again. Voter registration is available until the 13th at the Board of Election. If you have to go after that date, give them a call, and I'm sure they'll be able to work something out. The 13th is set in place so that they're able to produce the lists so that they can give them to the inspectors for people that walk in and are ready to vote. Public hearing notice, there are 5 dates that it went and is going to go into 2 newspapers, the Times-Union and the Daily Gazette. All those dates are listed there. Next, we have the voting requirements. Citizen of the United States, you must be at least 18 years of age, yes, and a resident of the school district for at least 30 days. Okay, these here are the list of reasons to request absentee ballot. As I mentioned earlier, you do have to go through an application process. It's pretty simple. It's just check and sign and send back to me. And then those are due to me, the application should be back to me ASAP so that we can send you an absentee ballot. And then the absentee ballot is due to me on the 21st, which is the same day of the vote, no later than 5 p.m. And I'm at One Academy Park. All right, so applications should be filled out at least 7 days prior to the election. If the recipient wants them to be mailed to them. If not, if you're willing to come down to Academy Park in person, the day before would be ideal. Next, we do have the example of the ballot. So the left-hand side, Proposition 1 is the actual budget amount. Right below that, Proposition 2 is the facilities project referenda. On the right-hand side, top right, you'll have where it says samples in the first 2. You'll have first Ann's name, Ann Savage, then you'll have Ms. Damaris Alexander Mann, and then below that will be the trustee Albany Public Library, and they'll be listed out. There's 4 of them. And this is what is also sent out as the absentee ballot. All right, come election day, which is, again, May 21st, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., our poll inspectors are expected to be there from 6:30 at the latest to 9:30 p.m. They have been instructed to stay until the very end so that the chairperson is not the only one still stuck in the building. Also, trained cabinet members will be assigned to locations for assistance throughout the day to go and help whatever it is that's needed over at the different locations. Again, absentee ballots are due to me 5 p.m. May 21st at the very latest, and vote locations are available in the budget newsletter mailed to all Albany residents and on our school website. And you could also give me a call. I've got 2 numbers listed on the bottom so that you can figure out where you need to vote. Contact information is here again for myself and for Board of Elections. For those who are not yet signed up to vote or registered to vote, they can go and do that with them. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Board colleagues, are there any questions, comments, or concerns for Board Clerk Sturdivant? Ms. Smith?
So, Ms. Sturdivant, I
Yes.
just want to thank you very much on behalf of the board for this work. You have made it appear to be like easy for some reason, but I know that it's not. But I want to just express thank you and appreciation for the work around this piece in particular. Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Other comments and questions? I have one question about the ballot design.
Yes.
In past elections, we've had this similar ballot design with the names in the top row and the write-ins immediately below. And I know it has led to confusion because the name, where you have the word sample, is often towards the bottom side of the box, and the bubble is at the top of the lower box, and sometimes people have bulleted them in. And I'm wondering, now that we are running our own election and we're not tied to the way it interacts with the party votes in November, whether we could just put those write-ins all in the same row, so it would be sample, 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 write-in, write-in, and that would it would obviate that problem. The year that we had 8 school board candidates, we had write-in beat several of the lesser polling candidates, and I always thought it would be an interesting thing to foil that, to see how many of those write-in votes were actually votes for the person right above the write-in,
Yes.
because I suspect it was more than a handful. So I'd like to see if there's some, not a technical reason it has to be done this way, if we could put those write-ins just along in that same row.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I can reach
Fine
out
with
and see
that.
if they can change that.
Dr. Chatur?
The other thing you could do is you could put the bubble before the name.
You could. I think the
Like a
bubble is always in the same position relative to the box in every time we use it, and you can ask whatever they can do to avoid that confusion, but it does
Okay.
create confusion.
Okay, I can do that.
And then, like Ms. Smith before me, I wanted to take a moment to thank you not just for your work on this. This board clerk only gets to sit at that table once a year, usually. So this is our one chance to say thank you. Thank you for the excellence you're bringing to your position as you have taken in this fire hose of information over the last couple of months. Thank you for the good humor you've brought to that and the efficiency and organization you are bringing to the office. We appreciate you every single day. Thank you for being there.
No problem. Thank you. Am I done?
You may now return to your normally accustomed seat, not in the spotlight. And we look forward to your success with your first vote on May 21st. And that brings us to a capital project update.
Good evening. We're here to get an update on the high school project. You all were able to take a tour earlier this evening. It's all very exciting. There's a lot of good things coming. So with that, we'll have Rich Peckham from CS Arch and Scott DePhillips from Turner Construction give an overview of where we are right now in the project and the good things to come.
So the first part, we just wanted to show you this diagram, because often we'll reference an area of the building, area 7's under construction, or area 8 we're putting the roof on, or something like that. So we wanted to kind of include this in the presentation so you can see essentially the main areas that the classroom addition we're working on now is really areas 8 and 7 that are highlighted here. And then you can see the other areas. Scott is talking with construction staff. We'll talk about part of area 4 being constructed, and then we'll be moving into area 5 as part of phase 2 of the project. So this is just kind of, there is a point of reference for those discussions that we have relative to those areas of the building.
Okay, hi everybody. Long time no see. So I'm going to skip over the area 7, 8 as quickly as I can. I know you probably have a lot of other things to get to. So the most important thing is you were able to walk through all of the areas of the building today. So the steel is complete, the concrete's complete with the exception of that first floor slab. Really the main happening is over on the other side at Area 4. The deteriorated steel, which is against the Area 4, that area is what we had to hold off to get started once the weather broke. Fortunately, the weather has been cooperative, believe it or not, and quite a bit of work has happened over the last several weeks. The deteriorated steel is completed. The athletics folks are back in those spaces using the rubber gym, as well as your extracurricular sports are in there after school as well. So looking ahead, our Area 7 is that area we were looking at today to get poured that slab next week. Our Area 4, 6 is kind of over by the old pool building up against the rubber gym. That work has begun and is ongoing and should catch up fairly quickly to the needs of the academic addition. If you remember, that Area 4 is your new boilers and chillers and really all of the central plant, the heart and nerves of your new campus. So it's our goal to push as quickly as we can to get that to catch up to the Area 7, 8 addition. Phase 2, you awarded contracts several weeks ago for our Phase 2 contractors. We've gotten their insurances and their contracts are in place now, and bonds are being sent in, and we're getting to work on that for a June 1st start. Don't be surprised if you actually see a lot of that mass excavation start much before June 1st. We're working closely with the building occupants to get out of that Washington Ave parking lot so that we can begin that mass excavation to kind of really get steel and concrete here for early June as opposed to starting excavation in June. So we're trying to push that schedule along for completion in 2020. Again, our major concerns have always been we're working in a 50-year-old building. We don't know what we don't know until we uncover things, till we dig deep holes and find all of the things that have been here in Albany for years and years, just nobody ever told us about. So those continue to weigh heavily on us, and we do what we can to manage that contingency. We'll continue to look closely at opportunities to scale back programmatically or in the overall construction phases to make sure that we're managing enough contingency to get you to 2025. So areas 7 and 8, you got to see this today, the new addition. The one thing that I am most happy to report that's no longer in that picture is the tower crane. That means steel is 100% complete in areas 7 and 8, so there was no longer need for the attractive nuisance at the south end of the building. So we'll have other ones to come shortly, but that one went away. Most of you saw these shots yourself earlier today. These are the second and third floor hallways, framing and sheetrock. And as we talked about earlier, a lot of this is going to progress very, very quickly now with windows coming in, drywall going up, and then over the summer you'll really see the classrooms take shape. Budget update. Again, we're managing our contingency very, very closely. Our remaining construction balance, if you take out the Jerson claim, which we are still continuing to negotiate, I know Mr. Honeywell has got plenty of time invested in that as well, but we think there'll be an amicable resolution to that within the next couple months, but I can't ever take that money back until I actually physically have it back. So if you keep the Jerson claim in there, we have a remaining construction balance left that we can spend of about $387,000. Not a great number considering where we're at in construction, but knowing that the Jerson claim is going to settle for considerably less, I think our overall construction contingency is right in line with where we are build to date. So nothing that I would raise a red flag over, but it is something that we still monitor very, very closely with the design team and make sure that we're not spending money unnecessarily. We watch programmatic needs, and there's some times where we just have to say no, it wasn't in the budget, and so we're unable to do that at this time. So classroom addition, our overall schedule, January 27th is going to be the first day of student occupancy in the new addition. I was told that recently, so I'm sharing that. Yeah, we're saying February. It was always going to be February 1st, but programmatically it makes sense right after Regents Week to take possession of that building and throw us out. So I'll have to go elsewhere. So phase 2 occupancy, fall of 2020. Again, that is probably going to be a staged occupancy. When you look at that area there. There may be, you know, the second and third floor art, and those classrooms will all come back right online right as fall students come back. And then your storage spaces, those types of things may lag a little bit later. Phase 3, similar program. The only thing I didn't get a chance to update was the occupancy is not actually 22. Phase 3 occupancy, full, complete, done is really going to be 23 because we met and did more detailed phasing and how we're going to move around your existing spaces with the principals and your directors, and we found that it just makes more sense to stretch it out a little bit and not to disturb all of those parts and pieces all at the same time. So working with that group, we've now, most of you have seen, we've published a new sort of phase 3 phasing plan, which kind of breaks it off into 4 smaller phases within the building that make sense to the programming of the facility. So that'll change. We'll have partial occupancies all throughout. Certain spaces will get turned over, and we could talk more about that when, as you see that phasing planning, you start to digest it. But the end date of fall of 2025 is still, you know, we're pulling out of here in 25, so I'm hopeful that we'll be done by then. So again, this is just kind of where we're at in the, just to reorient yourself, the phase 2 is music art. Classroom edition is what we're starting in June out on Washington Avenue, and then the 3-story classroom edition in the back.
We had talked when we walked through today at the 3rd floor about the bridge that connects across. Well, that's above this area where the bridge will be coming across. I'll probably have the overall plan in a future thing, but this is the rendering of the Music and Art addition from Washington Avenue. That's the addition. They'll be starting construction June 1st. Masonry on the bottom, and then metal panels for the area above. All these windows along here are for the art classrooms up there with a lot of north-facing light for those art classrooms. Your large-scale chorus, band, and orchestra classrooms on the street level, with high windows above with some vision out. The area on the corner has the risers in it for chorus, so we didn't want those up against windows, so that's kind of part of what drove some of the design here. Just interior pictures of one of the large music spaces. This is the band room. You can see the ceiling design, which we changed a little bit to contain some costs on that. Still a very acoustical ceiling, and with the natural light and the windows for this space. This is one of the art rooms on the 3rd floor, looking out to Washington Avenue, again with all the glass, open structure, more of a studio type environment there than a classroom environment. You can see the pull down cord reels for power if they need those for activities at the art tables. They'll have that ability to do that in those spaces. So this is just back to the overall 2nd floor plan for phase 2. And then if we start looking at what we're doing now, we're currently in the final design phases for phase 3, which will be going to state ed this summer for this next round of bidding and awarding come this time next year. That's where we're going to actually infill the auditorium. This is when the auditorium will come offline. We'll renovate the auditorium. We'll build the cosmetology classroom. The new main entrance will take place at that time, the entrance plaza coming into the building, and when we create the new library media center along Washington Avenue on the 2nd floor. The 3rd floor is where we'll be inserting the balcony for the auditorium, additional media labs, TV, video studio, a lobby area, art gallery on the 3rd floor, black box theater area and dance studio in this area. And this is where you can see then the running track that comes all the way around the existing gym. Some people on the tour were asking, well, how do we get between the 2 gyms? There's a space above the existing ceiling between the 2 existing gyms that we will be taking the other part of the running track. And this area is the area where we talked about the big trusses that are going to be installed come this summer to make that connection across between between the new classroom wing and the Phase 2 art and music wing on this side. This is just the overall first floor plan of Phase 3, and we'll be renovating and doing work in the locker rooms. The first floor of the existing loft building becomes CTE space for automotive technology and building trades, as well as some other CTE spaces. And this is a large storage room which gets built in Phase 2 for a lot of the outside gymnasium equipment, athletic equipment, to be able to be stored in there. This is just some renderings of where we're at with the design of some of the aspects of it. This is the main entrance, student entrance from Washington Avenue. Instead of using folding tables set up in a corridor for the security checks, we will have some built-in casework where bag check can occur, set up where the metal detectors can be, where students will just be able to walk through those, and it won't be set up in a corridor and have to break that down after the morning come in. You can still use this for event entrance for basketball games and other things to manage the security in the building. This is a rendering from the main lobby. This will be the stair that if people are going to the third floor for the balcony for the auditorium or for the other aspects that are on the third floor, this is part of the main lobby. Open from the third floor down to the second floor into the lobby, but enclosed with glass so that we have security and code requirements, but have a lot of transparency between those levels. This is just a rendering of the cosmetology lab that's being built in Phase 3 and how that will look. This is the new building trade shop that'll be on the first floor off of the Washington Avenue parking lot area in the northwest corner of the building. Overhead doors so they can build larger pieces and move them in and out of the shop here. This stair up you see is really just a stair up to a storage mezzanine so they can store lumber and other materials that they can buy in bulk and store there and bring them down when they need them for working on projects. And this is the other major CTE space, bringing the automotive technology over from Brooklyn into the high school, and just showing how that will be set up with lifts that can be raised to work on the cars, 3 overhead doors going out to the exterior to be able to bring cars and other equipment in and out of this area of the building. And then this is the health science lab where your nursing assistant program and other health science portions of the curriculum will take place, and that will also be constructed in Phase 3. These are actually simulated hospital rooms, and they'll even have simulated head walls with plug-ins for gas. They won't be operational, but show them how the lights work and how the plug equipment in to obtain oxygen and other aspects of that profession. So again, just orient us back to the overall third floor, Phase 3 overall first floor plan and the areas of the major work of the athletic spaces and the CTE spaces, and then the area underneath the auditorium is being renovated for support spaces for the auditorium, set building, costume shop, dressing rooms, things like that down there. And then in Phase 4, which we're finishing up schematic design on, that's when we build out the rest of the cafeteria, kitchen, other CTE spaces, renovate the classrooms at the south end of the existing classroom wing for the high special needs classrooms. And then the second and third floor are renovated for the final 2 small learning academies of the building. And that again will be phased construction. Probably a third of the building at a time we'll have under construction at once when we do Phase 4. And that will bring us to the completion, in, as Scott mentioned, in 2025, when we can throw us all out of the building and have free reign for the district. So just the next steps we're going on. Phase 2, we've reviewed some potential cost savings and have submitted those to the contractors to see what they're worth, and we'll be starting construction in June on Phase 2. Phase 3, design development's been submitted to Turner for estimating. We're expecting that estimate in around the middle of May. See where we're at relative to budgets. As we've talked, the construction market is a little volatile right now, so we want to make sure that we're protecting the budgets appropriately so that when we get to Phase 4, we're going to deliver everything that we've promised the district to be able to deliver. So Phase 3 will be bidding and awarding contracts spring of 2020. And then Phase 4, the final phase of the project, we're completing our programming dialogue with the teachers and staff on the details of classrooms and completing the schematic design on that phase of the project. And that concludes our presentation for this evening.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Board colleagues, if you think you might have more than one question, let's try and prioritize and ask the most important one first so everybody gets a chance. Ms. Wilson.
Just curious, and perhaps this is to be developed, but have you given any consideration to the locker size and dynamics?
What was the second part of your question?
Just where they'll be located, positioned, and things of that nature.
Okay. The lockers are all in the, there'll be lockers in all the corridors within the small learning communities, so that the intention is that there's lockers basically between the doors, the pairs of doors. So if in there, and they're to get the number of lockers we're in, and we worked with the administration on this, they're half-height lockers, but they're full width versus the very narrow ones that they have now. And the word we find, not just in Albany, but a lot of schools, a lot of kids don't use lockers anymore. But that's what we've planned for in this project.
Anyone else have a question or a comment? Ms. Lang?
The entranceway, we often hear that, there's a bottleneck and sometimes it takes quite an amount of time. Are the two entries enough for our students? It looked like it was kind of wide, and is that going to cause a bottleneck and time getting into the facility?
Well, ultimately, it's not the only entrance we're setting up. That's not the only location. That's the Washington Avenue entrance. There's also, let me see if I can get to the best plan for, okay, so there's going to be a similar setup in the back here on the first floor where we can bring it in. And then depending on, we've talked with security about at least being able to set up this entrance off the parking lot as a third entrance point if they feel they need it to be able to accommodate the students coming in.
Ms. Smith?
Just wanted to say thanks again for the tour today. It occurred to me now, because we were on the facilities committee, I was kind of a little, maybe a little bit oriented to the design here. But I was wondering, when you do the actual tours with other groups, will you have these, plans available?
We can, yes.
You guys know what you're doing.
Anyone else have a comment or question? Dr. Shtor.
First and foremost, thank you for the tour today. I mean, it's nice to see what we saw. I mean, all the straight lines of sight and this beautiful new classrooms. So thank you. It's one thing to see it on paper and see the actual construction. I want to follow up Jen's question, Ms. Lang's question, in terms of the entryway. Now, you showed that you have this desk kind of situation that you built, right? Is that flat end of the desk movable? So in case you wanted to bring in some equipment or something that is big and won't really go through the security door, maybe you can move that desk part. Is that, you know what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying. That's a good question. We also have, so if you want to bring something large.
So you don't have to go all the way to the back of the school and bring it all the way to the front. That section could be movable if needed, modular. Thank you for the
That's a good point. We'll look into that.
Anyone else with a first question? Can I just ask what programmatic discussions have been happening around the year that because I think it's a full year that the auditorium is going to be offline, in terms of theater performances. I see Ms. Bechtel is reaching for the microphone.
I was going to defer to Ms. Bechtel.
So it's really been over the last several months that we've finalized when we will no longer have access to that, to the auditorium. And that will happen right after the musical next year. So we will continue to be able to have the musical right through then. But as of April of 2020, the auditorium goes offline. So what Kate and I have discussed, and high school administration, is that we have a year, at least on the fine arts side of things, we have to find alternate spaces for all of our concerts, our winter and spring concerts, the play and the musical. So that's something that we are doing that work now. And then on the high school side, they too are thinking about how to be strategic about how they use that auditorium for their end of year events, for their beginning of year events, and how they could deliver those things perhaps in a different way to students for that probably about 15-month period that we won't have access to the auditorium.
Thank you very much. Other questions? Anybody have a second question? Ms. Lang.
The desks and the furniture, I was wondering if you could talk about when the purchasing of those would be, or if there was pictures or information that we have about that.
We've been working with the teachers and administration on furniture. We actually have a meeting with them on Monday to kind of review where we're at on the final recommendations for furniture. We've got to look at the overall budget and make sure for the whole 4 phases we're selecting furniture that will fit with budget-wise across all 4 phases. And it's my intention to review what our recommendations are after this with the facilities committee at the next meeting. The intention is to try to get the furniture ordered around the end of June or July so that it's all here and ready to be installed when the building is ready. Which we're looking right now is having like the month of January up to that point where you're going to occupy it to get the furniture in and get the district's IT backbone and all that equipment in there that we need to move in there. The intention is to put all new furniture in the addition, so it's not, when teachers are moving in, it's not going to be an issue of having to move furniture from existing classrooms to new classrooms and have that delay. So it would almost be, teachers just have to pick up what they need from their classroom and move it to their new classroom, so.
Just a quick follow-up on that. What I'm seeing when I look at renderings is a lot of furniture that has some flexibility so that you push desks together, you get separate desks, you put them together in tables of 4. Is that still the vision for how the furniture would be?
Yes, that's the vision. We tried out some furniture on wheels, both desks and chairs, and the teachers did not feel that that was working well for them. But it's still going to be individual desks and individual chairs. It won't be the connected desk and chair units that you sometimes have in high schools, which are much more difficult to move around. So whatever we use, yes, the intention is to be able to push them together into groups, pull them apart for activities depending on what's appropriate for what's going on in the classroom.
So they're really more like tables, like individual tables that can be pushed together or separated, as opposed to like the old desks with the flip-up top. Or the
Yeah, no, they're not having flip-up tops. I don't even know if they make those anymore. Probably too many liability claims for people getting their
Lost
fingers pinched in them.
Ms. Wilson.
I'm so sorry. I just had a question about green space and also landscaping, and whether at this stage or if it's too soon, does the garden club have an allocated space?
So the Garden Club hasn't lost their current space. Their newest, most current space, we've moved them a couple of different times. Where they are now, they stay there till 2023. And then we're going to discuss at phase 4 where's the most, only because during construction, that space will still remain after we're completed, but certainly we'd have to work, we can't have them directly underneath where that work is taking place. So we may need their hopeful last temporary spot before they could come back to that location if they like that location.
As far as general landscaping, we have a landscape architect that's working with us, and really we'll be coming to you with some more renderings of basically the front entrance to the building, the front of the building, and how that entrance and activity of entering the building and landscaping. School districts normally have a love-hate relationship with landscaping relative to maintenance and also relative to people being able to hide things in landscaping that we have to be conscious of in our design of those elements.
Additional questions? Can you just confirm? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Chidor.
Not a question, but a request. You probably have 3D models, right, of the final version. Would it be possible to bring that to the, when we're having a community event or something, so people can see how this thing might look? I don't know if it's doable. I'm asking.
Actually, we don't have 3D models. We do everything in the computer. So we can bring more three-dimensional axonometric renderings and things so they can see the whole thing put together, because we can actually take the building apart in slices, like each floor, and be able to show it. So that might be useful for
So
people.
when you have community events in the building, it'd be great for people to actually see this vision.
Yeah. We need another budget for that.
Maybe we'll hire a summer intern to be able to do that.
Can you just confirm the contingency numbers that you were showing are the phase 1 contingencies?
Yes, that's correct. That's our phase 1 overall budget. We have a budget in phase 2. As you know, we were slightly over budget with the bids, which Rich was talking about us working with bringing those numbers down. Once we get the those final numbers in, we'll update the phase 2 budget and we'll present that to the facilities committee, and ultimately in our next board update, you'll see phase 1, phase 2, and we can even show you how that relates to the overall project budget if you'd like.
Ms. Smith?
I just thought, because there's not an opportunity at the end there, I just would like to make sure everyone knows the next facilities committee meeting is May 14th at Academy Park at 5:30. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions related to the facilities update? Thank you very much, as always, for your very helpful information that you presented tonight. That brings us to the priority activities update part 3.
Good evening again, and thank you so very much for this opportunity to present our part 3 of our priority activities update. Tonight is a focus on instruction, and so we have presenting tonight is Dr. Cecily Wilson-Turner, the Assistant Superintendent for Elementary Education Division, Ms. Lori McKenna, the Assistant Superintendent for Secondary Education Division, and also Ms. Karen Bechtel, the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Professional Development. We've all talked about our vision, mission, and goals, and tonight our goals are going to focus on the enhancement of the delivery of quality instruction and building our leadership capacity. Over the past year, when we started back in August of 2018, we developed our priority goals, and then we have listed for each of those goals what are the activities that we are doing within each of those goals to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our students. And so first you see student achievement, then the delivery of quality instruction, building our leadership capacity and increase accountability, empowering our families, and then partnering with our diverse community. And so we're going to do this in a little reverse order, but we're going to talk about our leadership capacity first, so that you can see that framework and that frame and structure of what our assistant superintendents do in terms of the leadership observation and feedback cycle model, and working with our principals on a monthly basis through separate check-ins with them individually. Also, we have the professional development on a monthly basis with our principals and district leadership, and looking at our assistant superintendents follow through and how they progress monitor the site-based SIP so that we can look at those various indicators that we use to measure success. And the walkthrough protocol and learning walks that they do at both the elementary level and secondary level in order to see what are the indicators that we look for, what is our progress toward those indicators that get us to student success, what are the trends that we see, and then what are those next steps? How do we determine what our next steps are in meeting where some of those gaps may be based on the information that we find out in our walkthrough protocol? So we'll start with that, and then we will move forward with the enhancement of our delivery of instruction.
Good evening, everyone. So building leadership capacity pre-K through 12th grade. So we have a fundamental belief that we are in service to our schools and our building leaders. And the one way that we support our building leadership in the most important way is, and to increase their capacity as leaders, we have regular check-ins with all of our building and district leaders. Depending on the level of support the building leader needs determines the length and frequency of our regular principal check-in meetings. However, the general rule is 1 to 2 hours per month for tenured principals and about 2 hours every 2 weeks for our probationary principals. Agendas for these check-in meetings are collaboratively developed between the building leader and the assistant superintendent. There are standing agenda items that I'll go over in just a minute that are included in every agenda and are topics of conversation at each check-in meeting. Instructional walkthroughs, we try to begin each check-in meeting with at least one instructional walkthrough with the leader. This gives us the opportunity to engage in dialogue with the principal around instructional practices in the classroom within their building. A review of the walkthrough trends also gives us the opportunity to again discuss the trends across the building and the areas of growth or focus in the school and the connection between what is happening in the classroom and the school's improvement plan. We also, through the evaluation process, each school leader develops 2 to 3 goals each year. During these check-in meetings, it gives us the opportunity to discuss the progress toward their goals and determine if mid-course corrections are needed, identify any barriers or challenges that are impacting progress towards meeting their goals during this time. We also discuss progress toward meeting their SEP goals and implementation of the initiatives. We often look at real-time data in the data dashboard to determine the successes or the barriers towards their goals and initiatives, and have that dialogue again on any mid-course corrections or trends that we may be seeing in their data. We also monitor during this check-in meeting leaders' progress towards completion of teacher and assistant principal observations on a regular basis. This ensures that we're meeting the timeline requirements as outlined in our APPR plan, and we're not falling behind, and we're getting them done in a timely manner. Lastly, we provide an opportunity for our leaders to identify items that they feel need to be addressed, as well as items that we need to discuss. And so really it's a collaboratively developed agenda, and it's a back and forth dialogue with our principals. In addition, Cecily and I meet regularly. We have our regular check-in meetings with our district administrators, with our student support services, E&L, special education, and people personnel services. We have a 2-hour student support meeting each week, and it really gives us an opportunity to have, to develop this collaborative approach to student supports in the district and how we are in service to our schools, and to ensure that we are meeting the requirements, for example, of our assurance of discontinuance, and that we're just staying on course for what we said we would be doing in our district comprehensive improvement plan. Our goals are in our agendas, and so we monitor those regularly, meaning every week when we meet as a student support services team. With that, I will turn it over to Dr. Wilson Turner.
So another piece of our work is tied directly to the data. So one of the things that was listed on the previous slide for one of the standing agenda items for principal check-ins is the data dashboards. And you all had the privilege of seeing those that were developed by the ODAT office for our schools to use. And we consistently use them in our principal check-ins as one of the key elements of monitoring their school comprehensive education plans. So the Office of Data Assessment and Technology built those dashboards specifically for the elementary level with their SEP indicators to support the monitoring, and specifically for the secondary level to support their monitoring. So we're able to look at them in principal check-ins, and principals are able to utilize them during their building leadership team meetings to support the monthly monitoring of the SEP. So we've gone from just the required twice a year, review to it's a monthly process that actually occurs. It allows us to provide the necessary support if they feel like they're struggling to complete an activity or if they need to do the revision of an activity, making the SEP, as we talk about when we do the approval process, a living, breathing document that is constantly monitored and adjusted to actually have impact, not just a compliance activity. Specific to elementary, and I know Karen will talk a little bit about this, during our monthly PD meetings with our administrators, elementary and middle split in the afternoons this year, which they, have some mixed feelings about, but we're trying to differentiate that level of support. But because the elementary folks are required to participate in one embedded PD session alongside their teachers this year, we reduced their monthly PD session as a district group to only half a day. And our focus during that time has been on our particular data indicators, going deeply into our NWA data, our Ames Web data, and our New York State assessment data, so that they have a thorough understanding of what we look for consistently throughout the district and are able to go back and bring that to the staff. One of the most powerful changes I've noticed in the elementary principals as a result of that is their capacity to have individual conversations with teachers about their data, what it means and why it's important to monitor it. Really awakening in teachers, it's, if you're taking the time to give the assessment, you want to take the time to utilize the data in a more meaningful way. However, they're done with me around 12:30 that day, because then they have to give up another half day at another time during the month to participate with me and their teachers in the embedded professional development that is being provided by our instructional supervisors in mathematics and ELA. And the reasoning behind that, again, focuses on the building of capacity of our administrators. They should have a similar understanding of what their teachers understand if they're going to go in and provide effective feedback to them. And so it's resulted in them developing a deeper understanding of their mathematics and ELA curriculum in their building, the effective instructional strategies that need to be occurring, and ways that they can support their teachers. What we do at the conclusion of those sessions is their teachers leave and they stay with me for another about 45 minutes to debrief what the session was and what their look-fors are going to be as a result of those teachers participating in that professional development. The whole idea behind the embedded professional development was to close the loop on professional development. We give teachers a lot without having a concrete look-for after it's concluded, and so we were able to tie that directly to the walkthroughs, which we'll talk about in a minute. Data teaming has been something we've been working on since Lori and I have been in this position, and we're very happy with the progress that we've made there, that we have consistent established protocols for elementary, middle, and high school with the support of the teachers union in terms of agreed upon protocols and forms that are used during that time and how that time is effectively utilized. And as a result, classroom level data is reviewed every 1 to 2 weeks based on what they're looking on for their particular area of focus. So teachers are learning how to really progress monitor at a granular level, and then to collaborate to develop strategies that are effective for students based on the needs presented in the data. I think I covered those. So walkthrough, I think, has been our heaviest lift because it is what we really feel is the linchpin of instructional leadership in our district. Conversations that I've had, particularly with principals this year, and Lori as well, is if you're not in the classroom, you don't have a good sense of where the rubber meets the road and what's actually occurring instructionally in your building. And that's the power of the walkthrough, in addition to being able to use it as a vehicle to improve instructional practice. And I say that because principals do struggle to find that time to get into the classroom with everything else that they're able to do. So really trying to get them to understand that that is central to their work. So the goal of the walkthrough is to, A, improve instructional practice through a feedback cycle, again, connecting it to that professional development and closing that loop, but also having a sense of what instruction looks like in your building and where you as a building need to go next. And it allows you to monitor the initiatives that you've put in place in your building. So if you say you've been working on differentiated instruction for 2 years, when you go into your classrooms, that's what you should be able to see in practice. And if you don't, it gives you a place of where you want to start to refine your professional development. All of our schools and school leaders conduct walkthroughs, both individually. If they have an assistant principal, sometimes they'll do them paired with their assistant principal, or they do them paired with a district leader. Every instructional supervisor is responsible for partnering, and some of our directors and assistant directors, for partnering with our administrators to walk through our buildings for the same purpose. If you are putting initiatives in place, you need to be able to get out there and see how the rubber is meeting the road, whether it's having a desired impact, and what adjustments need to be made. And those paired walkthroughs, as difficult as they are to schedule, are probably our most powerful, because it's incredible to walk in partnership with your district leader and your building leader, to be able to have those really succinct and focused conversations about what needs to happen next in practice. What we did differently this year was we had principals conduct a baseline of where teachers were in their practice, so they have a sense of where they need to grow teachers and how they need to focus their energy around teachers to support them. We recognize that every teacher is on a continuum. We shouldn't be starting everyone in the same place. I spoke about how the walkthroughs are connected to embedded PD. And then the sixth grade, the principals who have sixth grade in the elementary buildings did a special partnership with our instructional supervisors in both STEM and humanities to do learning walks so they develop a better understanding of the sixth grade curricular expectations and can provide better support to that work. As we recognize our sixth grade students will be in our elementary buildings for at least the next 3 years, and we want to ensure continuity in instruction for them. And so that's been a powerful model. And then the middle school, for their afternoon professional development, when we split, they're doing loading walks every month as a middle school team with the leadership of Ms. McKenna and the instructional supervisors at the secondary level. So they're building their capacity to look at instruction in a similar way and to be able to speak similar language around instruction. Principals monitor their walkthrough trends. Almost every SEP has walkthroughs built into it strategically because, again, we say that's where the rubber meets the road, and so they monitor that through their SEP and also through a sample tool that I'll show you. And feedback is mostly provided in writing because we have a document that they can fill out that generates automatically to the teacher, so they get that feedback within a 24-hour period. We've been moving slowly into the face-to-face conversation piece, and the only reason it's slowly is because time is the enemy, right? It's very difficult to have that versus sending a piece of paper. However, every principal who has begun to implement that face-to-face model prefers it over the written because, of course, there's something very different that occurs in that face-to-face conversation that's much more personal and allows people to have more authentic conversations that will move practice. So we'll continue to work on developing protocols and systems around increasing in-person feedback for our administrators and teachers. So this is just a quick sample of real data that exists, but it's actually a hodgepodge of different schools. So the way our form is generated, we get these analytics back once you submit your walkthrough. So a building principal, myself, Lori, Kawita, we could go in and look into the analytics of the walkthroughs for an individual building and see here what grade levels are being visited the most, what content areas are being looked at the most. So is a building only looking at reading, only looking at math, or are they doing an equal division of those pieces? What their area of focus has been, so are they spending a lot of time, this building spending a lot of time in cognitive engagement? You can see their standard lesson objectives. You can see every response that has been collected by the principal in a comprehensive format for each building that allows us to identify what the trends are and the areas of focus and work that can be done in those particular areas. What we don't have at this point in time is something that summarizes it for the entire district. We kind of have to compile that information from the individual schools. Okay. So this is actually at the close of March, over 600 walkthroughs are conducted in the elementary buildings. And that's a combination of the paired walkthroughs with district leaders, with myself, with APs. All of that work is captured into our little document I showed you just before. And primarily the focus throughout the district, which will not be a surprise to you because it's the focus of the SEPs and therefore what falls into their walkthroughs, is differentiation and student engagement. We are shifting, I will say, as a result of some recent professional development. where people are really beginning to look at the continuity of instruction in alignment with the Common Core Learning Standards and whether or not we're teaching rigorously enough around those standards. And so we'll begin to see a shift in that trend as a result of that. So below are the trends as they make sense. Cognitive engagement, differentiation of process was really a big focus, and then higher order thinking, because those are the focuses that sat in the SEP. But those last three trends are really trends that emerge as a result of the embedded professional development that they receive as with the teachers, where we began to question, we're doing double dose, which is where we provide that reading teacher and classroom teacher providing a double dose of instruction in kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. And then saying to ourselves, if we went into our classrooms, would we see authentic double dose occurring based on the PD that we just received that says this is what it's supposed to look at? So the next month, we went into classrooms when we did our principal check-ins to see, how authentic is our double dose instruction? Where do we need to make adjustments? And what we noticed was in most of our buildings, we could see the reading teacher delivering similar instruction to the classroom teacher. However, in those buildings where it wasn't happening, it gave us a point of correction where we could get the instructional coach in to provide support and the instructional supervisor to provide support so that those things began to change over time. One of the big findings and trends are in math, where procedural versus conceptual understanding, and again, that came out of going through the professional development. We found that a lot of teachers focus on, I'm gonna teach you how to do the algorithm, versus I'm gonna teach you the concept behind what that actually means. And so that's where that standards focus is really going to shift our practice there. And that last statement, of course, is around the progression of the learning standards, really having an understanding of what came before and what's going to come after as you prepare students for instruction.
So very similar to the elementary level, we too, at the secondary level, conduct instructional walkthroughs. As Cecily had mentioned, not only are we doing individual walkthroughs at the building level with building leaders, we're also doing the paired walkthroughs with our district administrators and our building leaders. In addition, on a monthly basis, we meet as a middle school team, and we rotate through each of our schools, including Tony Clement and AIC, to conduct learning walks at each of our schools, which also includes our district leaders and assistant principals and principals. And we've done 96 learning walks to date and 448 walkthroughs in grades 6 through 12, so almost 600 walkthroughs between the two. Again, each school identifies their look-fors for their walkthroughs, very similar to elementary differentiation, both from content, process, and product, lesson purpose, engagement, and both behavioral and cognitive. The trends are pretty similar, very similar to the elementary, where we're seeing an imbalance of teacher versus student-led instruction. Majority of the students are participating and compliant with classroom rules and structures. However, the cognitive engagement that we really need to see, it needs to be reversed, where we see more ownership from a student perspective and less teacher-led. The differentiation of instruction from a content and process perspective, again, we're seeing that we're a one-size-fits-all rather than the differentiation to really meet the learner's needs in the classroom. So that's an area of focus for our professional development. And again, we're also seeing lesson purpose. It's aligned with the learning targets in the New York State standards in the majority of the classrooms that we're visiting. We've had a real focus on higher order thinking, where there's varying levels of questions, but mostly what we're seeing is those lower level questions in the classroom. So we're really trying to engage our teachers in thinking about purposeful questions to get to those higher level questions and really help our students to think through what they're learning. And then student feedback. Again, student feedback has been a real big focus at the secondary level, and providing feedback to our students so they are active participants in their learning and they know exactly where they need to focus their their energies around what they are learning in the classroom and taking ownership of their learning based on that explicit and specific feedback.
So you've heard the first part, which looks at, in supervising a school, what are the steps that the assistant superintendents are taking? So we are looking at what those trends are, which may be unique to an individual school, but then when it relates to the district level, we look at what are the commonalities among our schools, which then drives that district level professional development. So as we work from specific to the larger picture. Also, I want to refer back to the student support services piece and other departments that you hear from along the way. Those reports happen for you and you see those at that level, and then it just rolls up to the larger district level as well, because in analyzing those individual department results, that also helps us to gear what type of professional development might we see with regard to classroom management, with regard to trauma-informed care? How does that relate to the actual instruction that's happening in the classroom? And so I do want to emphasize the fact of truly getting to the level where we are using data to truly drive instruction, not just looking at the results and saying, oh, it looks like this might happen, so we start to do X, Y, and Z, and then the next few months something else happens, and then we jump to that. We can't do that in a systemic fashion and expect results. So we have to look at it over time to determine the professional development that we're implementing, and then what are the desired results that we're seeing over time. Because as you know, it doesn't happen overnight, but we have to be consistent with regard to the implementation of what we are seeing to meet those gaps, et cetera. I'd like to call your attention back to the slides that look at the results of the data from the walkthroughs and the learning walks. Just for clarification purposes, the percentages that you are looking at, that's the percent of time in the area of focus where it was observed, okay? So it's, yes, we saw it, this amount of time it was visible. So where you see some of the areas that may need work, absolutely they might need work, but that might be the initial, that might not be the initial focus. Because, so I'll use an example. If we look at student engagement and maybe we focus on student engagement through that one effort, we may be able to address differentiation, we may be able to address higher level thinking. So there may be some of those big rocks that we call them, that even though it may be delineated when you look at the small screens of 4, the snapshots of data, there may be one thing that excels. However, even behind the scenes, that one thing that excels may be touching 3 other points, but it was not seen during that snapshot of time. So I do want to extend a little word of caution. These walkthroughs are moments in time. And so it doesn't mean that one walkthrough is the elixir to anything that's going on. It means that, just that. It is one data point in time. What our assistant superintendents are doing is they are taking these multiple moments in time, putting them together to establish a trend. Then we look at what are our next steps based on these trends, which then leads us to Ms. Bechtel, who is our Director of Curriculum Instruction and Professional Development. And so at this time, we're going to hear how all of this comes together as we look to enhance the delivery of quality instruction, as well as building our leadership capacity, not just with our administrators, but among our teachers.
Thank you, Superintendent Adams. It's my pleasure here to talk about professional development. I love the fact that I heard Cecily and Lori speak about the things that they're doing on the ground. All of those things are reflected in that sort of 20,000-foot professional development plan for the district and the goals that we have around that. We redo our professional development plan every 2 years. Our goals, our overarching goals, have largely stayed the same. The first one is around the learning standards. You heard Cecily speak about we want to explicitly see the learning standards expressed in the classroom, and we want to ensure that they are rigorous and at that grade level. So that has been a bit of a shift this year that we'll see more of. Our second goal is really around instructional practices, and our third goal is around social emotional. You'll see reflected in those three overarching goals the work of the DSIP and the tenets that are in there. So basically what you see is that we are tying our district comprehensive improvement efforts, our school improvement efforts, the district PD plan, they're all tied and connected together. So, and that's how the plan works. We've just completed year one of our current 2-year plan, and we progress monitor that plan regularly. We did look at that at the mid-year point, and then over the summer we'll do another one when I put together a report for the board at that time to see how we're progressing towards achieving the goals and activities of the professional development plan. You heard about the elementary embedded PD plan. Overall, despite the obstacles sometimes that we have with subs, the small group environment has really been beneficial for the teachers and the instructional supervisors and the principals, because everyone is in that group and everyone has a responsibility to participate, because generally it's been around, 10 to 18 people in the room at a time, and that has really worked out very well. We're just nearing the end. We probably have maybe just another week or so of sessions left, and at the end of that, we will conduct a survey of the elementary staff to get their feedback. But anecdotally, because we've been doing the embedded PD, we are getting regular feedback as those sessions are occurring, and it has been most of all, it's been positive. So that's how we do professional development, and we get our results and the feedback, and then report back out on that and let that inform what we're going to do next. On the next slide is, I put this report in the update, I believe. We do regular surveys. When we are getting ready to do a new plan, we make sure that we do a district-wide survey. So what you see represented up here is one from spring of 2015, spring 2016, and then spring 2018. That's when we were getting ready to do our new plan in spring of 2018. It was a little bit of a challenge to go from year to year because we used different tools. The first two surveys represented up there were out of SurveyMonkey, and the Office of Data and Technology actually sort of ran that. But as the tools got more accessible, we started taking more ownership over how to do those surveys. So the most recent one was through My Learning Plan, and that was good, that was okay. But what we really turned to and have found very successful are the Google surveys. They're so easy, they're so quick, the analytics are great. So these were the overarching survey results around, how they wanted to attend PD, what professional learning would they prefer. We gave them choices to rate their interest in different things, and over time, those things more or less they stay kind of the same. And if you could go to the next page. So then the other thing that we started doing last year was a survey at the conclusion of every PD day. Prior to that, what I did was, and the principals loved me for this, is ask them when they were and facilitators, asked everyone to, at the conclusion, to provide me with a reflective summary based upon the exit tickets, and then we pulled that together into an internal report on every PD day, really, for the last several years. And we also asked folks to establish next steps so that people are not just doing sort of one and done, but thinking about how it fits into their school plan, and then what is the outcome that they're looking for, so that they know if something has to continue. And so we collect that in one space. But we didn't have sort of this quantitative data to look at that. That was sort of qualitative data. So we started doing this after the last survey the last PD day last year, and this is now our protocol and our practice. And what's represented up there is two, so the May 15th and then November the 6th. We're all set with our survey for May the 21st. It's ready to go once the day is complete. And we just kind of get a sense of where folks are feeling about how that went. These are the PD topics that have been more or less recurring. So, and you'll see, the differentiated instruction, the questioning techniques, higher order thinking, PBIS, RTI, our curriculum resources. That has been a regular part of the PD plan because we've been rolling out curriculum resources at the elementary level for the last couple of years. The items in red are new items. So I remember in 2016, when we really dove deep into the CRE, we said this needs to be reflected in our professional development plan so everything is connected. The work that we needed to do around code of conduct came in, restorative justice, trauma-informed care, all these efforts around social emotional health. And it's fascinating because I actually spoke to someone who works for CASDA today, and a curriculum person, and she told me that she hasn't been being used quite as much this year because so many of the districts are focusing their efforts on these social emotional items that really need to be addressed so that kids are ready to be successful in school. So I think that's it for PD. Yeah, and yes, the higher order thinking skills. So I'm going to switch now actually to talk give you a little bit of an update about IB. Very exciting stuff. Our coordinator, Leah Evans, who you met, has really been doing such a wonderful job. She has connected herself to the program manager at IB, which is great. I think they've got each other on quick dial there. And I love that because I have we have an AVID program manager as well who I email pretty consistently. She responds, we're on the phone, it's nice. And so we've made that relationship with the program manager at IB. Leah has also connected herself to a regional group called GIBS, and that is the Guild of IB Schools. And she attended a meeting, and it's a great network. So that has been good. She's a kids first kind of a gal, and she's really focusing on making sure that students are ready for their assessments, that they're organized, that they know what is coming. She's actually also worked on the 1920 assessment calendar for kids, and making sure that the current diploma kids are really ready for their assessment year next year. In regards to the 5-year plan, she's developed all the IB guiding principles. There are several, and this is our program manager, advised us that that was really the core focus, and they are around assessment, inclusion, and educational needs, academic dishonesty. And these, if they're not posted on the website, that's in the works as well. We're also exploring some additional pathways, but I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Really trying to grow our website presence. We had an advanced curriculum night on April the 16th. We had 17 families attend. Leah has developed an informational flyer for students and parents, and that work has been done. And also sort of a scheduling course so that when kids are thinking about IB, they're really plotting out, because it is a prescriptive schedule, they're plotting out what they would need to do when. So I know that you want to hear about recruitment. Leah has worked very hard to get particularly to the 10th grade, because we have 1 diploma candidate this year. We have 3 for next year. Those kids are on the track. But really where she needed to go was into the 10th grade, because that's when the students have to commit to the 2 year, it's really a 2-year program. So she did some very active recruiting. We now have, when I completed this, we had 8 diploma candidates for 2021. But as of, I think yesterday, we're up to 10. So she has really done some nice work about getting those kids interested. And so really what we're focusing on is the assessments that are this month, AP and IB, and the completion and submission of the 5-year plan. We're sending teachers to IB training. We have probably 3 to 5 that are going over the next several months. And really looking at how we can expand. Spanish was an area that we thought would be something that we could do a little more easily than some other places, but we also are looking hard at science and seeing what we can do with the IB bio. So that's really just the update on that, and and that's it for me. Thank you.
So just in closing, you're able to see the progress monitoring at a district level. It is a combination of qualitative and quantitative measures, and we use all of that to help us determine what the trends are and what our next steps need to be. And so we use that to also determine what our professional development is, both at the instructional level for teachers and the leadership level for our administrators. At this time, we will entertain any questions.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very extensive report, and we appreciate getting a little more insight into the important work of the instructional core, because it's hard for us to see. We don't always understand or see it because we're not living the life that you guys are living every day. So even though there was a lot of information there, we really appreciate understanding that and that at that level of detail. Board colleagues, I suspect there's going to be a fair number of questions, and so again, one at a time. Ms. Alexander-Mann.
This is more of a comment for Ms. Bechtel. I sincerely appreciated the update on the International Baccalaureate program, and I thank you for that. Very good.
Ms. Krejci?
Mine was also just more of a comment. Thank you so much for this very involved report. This is just at the heart of what we do, and it's really exciting to learn about what you're putting in place to make the education for children more cognitively challenged and really more rigorous in a specific defined way. So thank you so much. And also wonderful news about IB for next year.
Ms. Wilson.
Thank you so much for this report and presentation. It was outstanding, an excellent read, and very detailed. Again, I think you struck that balance between the warm, fuzzy, qualitative aspect of doing walkthroughs and the quantitative things about doing data-driven instruction. And we even had a presentation from ASH where they credited much of their success with the data-driven instruction. So thank you so much for that. And that's my first comment. Thank you.
Ms. Smith.
Just echo my colleagues. Superintendent, I wanted to thank you for the explanation about the walkthroughs in terms of the, the area of focus, the percentage of time. I did have one question, and let me just say, I like how you brought us to how the trends are developed. But when there is a walkthrough, is there an average amount of time that a principal or the pair stays in the classroom observing?
It's typically 10 minutes.
Okay.
We don't typically stay more than 15 minutes. You may stay a little while just to close something out, but it's a short amount of time.
Okay. So thank you. And I don't know if you it might have been in here that you said 10 minutes.
Nope.
I just didn't recall. Oh, okay. But I think again, I just wanted to emphasize that was the importance of what you said, Superintendent, because then you can sort of get us that snapshot. But it's over when you said 448 walkthroughs. Then you start to see how those trends develop. So thank you for that context.
Dr. Shatour.
Thank you for that, the whole walk through what you actually do, because now we understand things, I think, a little bit better and appreciate everything you do a little bit better. With regards to the walkthrough, I mean, you do it on a monthly basis for established principals and every 2 weeks for assistant principals or developing principals. So when you identify some issues and you, at the end of the walkthrough, you're sort of saying, okay, these are the things we need to target, here's what we need to do. So when you come back, like the next month or the month after, do you sort of see if those strategies have worked? And if they have or if they haven't, is it being documented somewhere for archival purposes so that 3 years down the road, we have built this body of knowledge in a way where we can make new mistakes, but we don't have to keep making the old ones.
Yeah, so what the analytics sample that I showed you is actually is backed up by an Excel spreadsheet that basically captures every walkthrough by teacher, by time, by grade level. So I can then go through with the principal and we can sort and say, okay, we went to see Miss McKenna's classroom last time. Let's take a look back. You've been in there 3 times. You know, have we seen a change in her practice based on the things that we were focused on when we went in there? If you haven't, what are your next steps around, you know, what to do there? Or we can go in and say, oh, we saw Miss McKenna last time. You haven't seen her since we went in and made some next steps. It's a focus that we need to get back into. And then Lori and I keep our principal check-in meetings in a folder each year where we have documentation of what our walkthrough trends and what we've discussed with principals around what we want to see next. And so we're able to then go refer back to that. And actually a standing agenda item is things that we agreed upon to do last time that we, you know, that we need to circle back in on so that we're able to roll over those items into the next agenda item. And because we meet with them frequently, they typically keep a list for us. I don't know if your principals do that. Well, here's my Cecily list, and here, you know, here are the things we need to go through. And I'm like, okay, here's my, you know, principal so-and-so list, and here are the things that we need to make sure that we touch base upon.
Ms. Lang?
I have quick ones, I think. What percentage of teachers have you gotten to in a classroom, or how is that decided upon, or are you seeing all of the teachers in all of the buildings?
Lori and I as individuals, or the principals themselves? Principals have seen every teacher in their building. Where we did, and I won't speak for you, Lori, but in our DTSDE process, what we did find in feedback from the teachers is some of our special area teachers were like, come see me. Nobody comes to see the PE teacher or the art teacher. You know, we want feedback too. So, you know, that was great feedback for our principals to be like, oh yeah, we can go and look at those places as well. But, you know, they have been through all of their teachers, many of them multiple times. You know, definitely there are some principals who, for them, this is a stronger practice than others, and they manage their time and they get in there. And for other principals, it's a little bit more work, but they've all been seen at this point in time.
So for my first question, I think when you talked about the results of the walkthroughs, I got the sense that in terms of differentiation and DOK levels, that you're feeling better about what you're seeing at the elementary level and maybe not as good, but in comparison, what you're seeing at the secondary level. Did I understand that right? That you're seeing that you have less confidence in where we are in terms of differentiation and
Right, we've seen progress, but again, we want to see differentiation or higher level questioning in all classrooms, and we're seeing it in pockets, and we're seeing it more in some classrooms and not so much in other classrooms. So yes, I've seen improvement, and probably Karen can speak to this as well, in our trends where we're seeing more differentiation, but it's not to the level where we would like it to be. So we still have work to do, but we've seen improvement over the last couple of years.
And I would be specific, the data that you saw is about the area of focus, so that's what the principals went in looking for and provided feedback on and are growing teachers' practice in. What we've seen the most growth in differentiation at the elementary is differentiation of process, because principals took it down to that bite-sized piece, and that's probably the easiest approach to differentiation, because you're giving children different ways to access their learning at that point in time, and so teachers can design different activities that tackle the same thing. But we're not at a level yet with the differentiation of content. We're not at a level yet with the differentiation of product. So there are levels to what needs to occur that we're making our way through. But to be quite frank, you know, I've referenced it, we're really taking a step back in our differentiation conversation to go back to the focus of the standards-based instruction, because if what I'm differentiating is not rigorous, the differentiation will not matter. So we're making sure teachers have a better understanding of that and really focus on scaffolding grade-level standards instruction for students, so that we're going to see that shift in our differentiation conversation.
So I just want, that actually wasn't my question. My question had to do with, did I even understand that right? So I appreciate that, but the real question I had was, given the fact that elementary is one teacher most of the day, and secondary is shorter periods of time with a single teacher, do you think that impacts our ability to be effective with our differentiation? That was the question I was trying to
So our secondary teachers are content specialists, whereas our elementary teachers are generalists, and I'm an elementary teacher at heart, and so I know it's much easier as an elementary teacher to differentiate whether it's content, product, or process than it is for a secondary teacher who is a content specialist, where they just want to teach the content, and sometimes they forget that they need to differentiate to meet the diverse learning needs of the students sitting in front of them. So I think we have to go slower to go faster with our secondary folks because of the nature of the content that they're teaching.
Okay, second questions, Ms. Smith?
So maybe okay, let me just ask. So I want to go to that cognitive engagement and where you specifically talked about the imbalance of teacher versus student-led directed. And I don't know if what you just talked about explains that imbalance, but I think that's what I wanted to kind of understand.
I think it's similar at both elementary and secondary, and even though they're the content specialists, teachers, we tend to teach the way we were taught, and so we think that teaching is about us talking, whereas we know that the better practice is if the students are doing the talking and they're doing the work and they're leaving really tired, then that's the really effective learning that's happening. And so we've been working on shifting that balance of student versus teacher talk.
Okay, so it's a shift in probably you're saying due to the way we were or teachers were taught to teach. Okay.
It's a little bit of that as well, because I won't say if you think back. If I think back to the way in which my methods classes were, had I not had the experience as a student of teachers who did project-based learning, who did a lot of student talk versus teacher taught to balance out what many of my methods courses were showing me, I would have been a different teacher. But because of the experiences that I had, which were grounded in project-based learning, debate, Socratic seminars, I brought that to the table in combination with the methods courses. It is very true that many teachers do teach the way that they were taught. So that is why we spend a lot of time with project-based learning, exposing our teachers to different ways to deliver that quality instruction. Not that those ways are, quote, wrong, it's just that there are better ways to reach our students today than what we did yesterday.
Ms. Wilson?
Thank you so much again, and I really think that the IB update was positive. I just think about the problems of the world all the time. So one of the things I always think about is information asymmetry and how people from differing demographics don't get exposed or may not know someone whom, or know of the program or know to ask about it or to enroll themselves in things. So I'm curious about thinking creatively about getting other people enrolled and any thoughts about that. I know it's early, but for example, targeted mail or letters home or things of that nature.
One thing that we did is we're trying to break that idea that IB is just for a high-end kid. So one of the classes that we have in 10th grade is called World Experience, and any student can access that class. It is the class that is it's an English global combination class in the 10th grade. And as I said, any student can access that class. So those sections were a key target area for Leah to get in and talk to students about how IB is accessible to everyone. And actually, I'm going to mention one of the AVID kids is actually in those 8 students, which is perfect because then you have a student who has the built-in support through AVID but can access the IB program. So one student is Indeed. I do have some demographic information, but it's hard when we're talking 8 students, or I think total we're up to I thought I did it for about 13 or 14 students. We're largely female, which is interesting. There are only a couple of boys, so we have to figure out how we're going to have that address that balance. And then, I think it was still a 50% white, 25% Asian, and then the other 25% broke down among other groups. But again, because we're talking such a small sample, it's hard to talk about demographics, but yeah.
And I
Yes.
can appreciate that, and I think you guys are doing a super job. I think that's outstanding. I was just more so thinking about those stakeholders in the community. Like sometimes there's larger churches, and it has to reach someone that may not even be the mom or the child, maybe an aunt or something, and they can carry that message and amplify it for us. So that was like the thought I was having, but I do know we have many community partners, and we can circulate that information and things too. So
That's a great idea.
thank you so much. Thank you.
So who has not had a second question that would like a second question? Dr. Tora, then Ms. Lang, and then I know you want something to.
So, I mean, and just tagging on to what Tabitha said, I think we should try and promote it more in the middle schools. At least get the information that, AP, IB, there's all these things that you can do so that by the time they come to the high school, they're already thinking about it. My question with regards to, I mean, you guys talked about doing an IB bio program or something like that, which is great because the health science field has a lot of jobs and opportunities that are available. But when I notice the IB subjects that we have, in terms of an IB diploma versus an IB certificate, for diploma we only have theater, art, and English at the higher levels, right? So are we thinking of adding something at the higher level for physics or bio, if we do bio, so that you can actually have an IB diploma in those science courses?
Yes, we are absolutely looking at that. And as I said, I think the AP Bio was one avenue to begin to open. The class has to run by itself. So we have to sort of build, we have to build it really from that 8th, 9th grade to make sure that kids are ready. But I think I don't want to speak out of turn, but I actually believe that we're going to try to open up something even for next year. But let me send something in the update so that I'm saying the right thing.
Ms. Lang.
So I really liked the breakout, and I thought this was an excellent presentation, if I didn't say that in my first question. And the areas of focus, were those focuses that came out of a need? And some of for example, one of the things that I noticed that wasn't on here was behavior, and we hear teachers really would like some instruction with behaviors or help or all of that, especially then we go into the code of conduct. So I was kind of interested in understanding more how we came to the areas of focus, and if there were broader data points or trends that aren't listed on here.
So I'm going to start, and then they'll chime into the second part of that. Part of the mindset change is that classroom management and discipline are not separate from instruction. The way in which instruction is delivered is the management of the class. So in trying to shift the thinking from having classroom management be something that sits over on a shelf that I do to students, shifting the mindset to the way in which I deliver the instruction from my procedures and my processes, et cetera, in the classroom becomes that management piece of classroom management. But it is through the delivery of instruction. So I'll start with that, and then they can shift into how that then rolls into the area of focus, and then the behavioral pieces are not necessarily separate and apart, but you see that through, I'm almost answering the question, I'm so sorry, because this is near and dear to my heart, but when you see that increase in that delivery of instruction with regard to student engagement, higher level thinking, when those things become the center and the core, many of the other pieces that are behavioral are separate and apart because you are taking care of it through the delivery of instruction that meets the needs of your students, but also engages them in more positive ways. So I will now hand over the microphone.
So one of the look-fors, as Superintendent Adams mentioned, was student engagement from a behavioral perspective, and that is looking at a student's effort, persistence, participation, and then compliance with what is happening in their classroom as far as expectations and rules. But in addition to the instructional walkthrough area focus, we also, through PBIS, conduct what we call Tier 1 fidelity checks. And so there's a checklist that we use. It's digital as well. where we go in and we look for specific look-fors that are addressing PBIS expectations. So that's another tool that we have that is not necessarily connected to the instructional walkthrough, but we're also looking for that student engagement from a behavioral perspective as well.
Ms. Smith?
So, and I agree with my colleagues. I think Dr. Chatur and Ms. Wilson spoke about like wanting to maybe have IB, move down into some of the middle school. And I guess I've always just believed that, that it really, as we're doing, it really is impactful that there are certain things that we're doing at those early grades that make that difference. I mean, and I know it's hard because we're also talking about a lot of kids who already are disadvantaged when they come through the door, and we know that kids feel that they know that they may be different, and so we have these hurdles to overcome. And so I want to say that it's not just simply about IB being pushed down, but it is about everything that you've talked about tonight, being very purposeful and intentional at those early grades, so that I'm not growing up thinking, oh, I can't possibly do this subject, I can't possibly take on this, because that stuff stays with you for a lifetime.
If you recall, Madam President, members of the board, and Vice President Smith, if you recall during the presentation several months ago when we first started talking about IB, we talked about we're burning the candle at both ends because we can't have a group that we forget about. And so we have to start right now with our high school because those are the ones that are most impacted immediately. And so through that process, if you remember in Ms. Evans's presentation, she talked about building this part and working very hard to increase the numbers and exposure here, and then moving back to what do we need to do to prepare kids at the middle level, and then also at the elementary level and pre-K level, because there is a curriculum with IB for elementary. And so that is going to be down the line. And so we have to, Ms. Evans has been on the job for how many years now? Not years in IB, but she's been there several months. And so if you recall when she talked about that, the long range goal is to embed those practices throughout so that when students enter high school, they are prepared. And then if they make the choice for IB, they are making the choice because they are prepared and they know what to expect, not by default that they don't feel that they can do it.
And again, I absolutely recall that. I just wanted to just emphasize that again because I remember that very well. So it's kind of rolling down. But in the meantime, there are things that we have to do that help to get our children to a different mindset. So that's.
One of the things in the walkthrough trends that I didn't see that I was a little bit expecting to see was something about culturally responsive education. That's something we talk about so much, and I know we've talked about how it would be looked for as part of the walkthrough, so I was kind of surprised not to see it, and I wonder if you could talk about that a little bit.
The reason that it is not reflected here is because we have just included it in the walkthrough tool as of February. That was when we had, based on the work that we've done with CRE, we've established 4 district-wide indicators, and so the data is relatively slim right now because we've just started it. We've only had it in the walkthrough tool for 2 months, and principals are just now getting to using that as they're walking, and it's a part of the same format. So those 4 indicators are there, and we are still collaborating. What truly, and that's part of that learning walk when principals are walking together with other principals. What does it mean when we see when we say student voice? When we talk about multiple points of entry for students, when we talk about culturally relevant materials, what do those things look like? So we're still collaborating and making sure that we calibrate those so that when principals are in various classrooms, the expectation is similar. So that is why. So thank you.
Anyone else have something else? Ms. Lang?
I know that this is really based on walkthroughs internally in the schools, but some of the things that for PD family engagement and how that kind of plays a part, are we doing principal walkthroughs or conversations with family engagement of reaching out to our parents in classrooms or teachers or schools, or what is kind of the trends or data points for that?
As you know, it sits in Tenet 6 of the SEP, so our conversations with principals around it, at least from Lori and I see it, is really when we do their SEP progress monitoring around the goals and activities that they've put in place. What I will say is it typically, as a trend across our SEPs, PD isn't a part of one of the activities they're doing. They're really still working on basic foundational skills of how they're communicating with parents in a two-way fashion, communicating in languages that they understand and making sure things are getting translated in an appropriate way. And I think the big focus in our SEPs last year were around finding different ways to reach parents other than expecting them to physically come into school. So using a lot of videotaping and posting things to social media so families can actually access information and events in a different way. So I would say, at least from the SEP seat, we haven't embedded PD in that, and I don't know if that's been a focus of the district.
Any other comments or questions? Did you guys have any closing remarks that you wanted to make? Good. Thank you very much appreciate. And now I think I get to ask the magic questions that we always like to hear, which is that, may I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? Ms. Smith, second by Dr. Chator. All in favor of adjourning the meeting at 9:23. That is unanimous.